Hello, everybody. I'm Eshan Pokhrel. Welcome back to the PB Political Podcast for episode number 20, where no guest today. We're just going to be talking about some of the biggest stories from last week, like we did a couple weeks ago. Today, we focus on student loans and President Biden's announcement regarding student loans. A little bit about elections and midterms, specifically Arizona's Senate race, where Blake Masters has really softened his campaign a lot from how he was campaigning during the primary, and a little bit more about that and what it could mean for Republicans in November. And Russia building new nuclear power plants in Hungary, and how that will not only just affect the European power grid, but also what that means alliance-wise in Central and East Europe with Russia. So, just a little quick episode today. If you like what we're doing, obviously go to pbpolitical.com, share it with your friends, family, anybody, and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or anything like that, and subscribe to us on YouTube. So thank you. Enjoy the episode. So the biggest news coming out of the last week was definitely President Biden's announcement of forgiving federal student loans for college students. Up to $20,000 of loans will be forgiven through the Biden-Harris administration student loan debt plan. So the structure of forgiveness is broken into two parts. So number one, those who receive Pell Grants to pay for college will receive $20,000 in forgiveness, while those who did not receive Pell Grants will receive $10,000 in forgiveness. In addition to those who had Pell Grants, it also says that, this is straight from the text, the Department of Education will provide up to $20,000 in loan relief to borrowers with loans held by the Department of Education whose individual income is less than $125,000 or $250,000 for married couples and who received a Pell Grant. So even if you did receive a Pell Grant and you earn over $125,000 individually, you are not eligible for the $20,000 of debt relief, but you still are available for $10,000. If every student eligible for this forgiveness plan opts into the plan, up to 20 million borrowers can see their debt fully wiped out immediately, which is a huge step in the right direction for them to be able to pay for a house, maybe a car, their family, anything going on in their lives. So there is a lot of promise and upside to the plan. However, criticisms come from both sides of the aisle. Progressives, on the left wing anyways, have actually criticized the amount that the loans forgive, saying that it should be more. President Biden was toying with the idea of canceling over $50,000 of debt. However, this is obviously much less than that. And some of the progressives are, especially those who believe college should be free and nationalized and should not be for profit, have criticized the move, while conservatives have criticized the move for claiming inflationary concerns. This will not help the current predicament. The current unemployment rate will not be helped. All of those concerns, as well as some moderate Democrats. This is very interesting. So, I would say President Biden falls into the moderate Democrat camp on most issues. And some people he's very aligned with, such as Representative Tim Ryan of Ohio. He's currently running for Senate in Ohio, won the nomination, and he's up against J.D. Vance. And he actually is in the fight right now. Ohio is not a state I would say Democrats could win, but they have been doing fairly well due to external issues such as abortion, the Dobbs case being abortion, CHIPS Act. A lot of it's going to Ohio. So a lot of economic promise there in Ohio coming up soon. So maybe that swings the vote. But J.D. Vance has also been fairly absent from the campaign trail. He's a first-time political candidate, so it does make sense that Tim Ryan's having some leeway there, as he is a fairly seasoned congressman from the state. But anyways, Representative Ryan is actually criticizing the move from President Biden, which is somewhat ironic considering he's actually voted for student loan relief bills in the past and made comments that actually support student loan forgiveness. He says that he supports tax cuts I'm assuming for those who are in these are under college debt, but He says that forgiving loans for quote unquote six-figure earners is not the right move, and should be the government should work to make it more of a across the board tax cut for, he says, working class and middle class families, medical debt cancellation, and targeted forgiveness for essential workers. So Tim Ryan's breaking on that a little bit, and it makes sense. President his popularity has gone up recently. He's in the 40s again, so congratulations to him after being stuck in the 30s for a good couple of months, the dog days of summer there for President Biden. But he has been actually picking it back up here, a little bit more fire from the Biden team, as he actually filed for re-election today. So he's hoping to capitalize on this new surge. But he's still not popular in a state like Ohio. He's not popular in most states right now. So it does make sense that Representative Ryan wants to distance himself a little bit, and it paints a very interesting picture. Now does Tim Ryan say that he become an anti-Biden Democrat in his run for Senate? No, he does not. There's no way. But it is interesting that even with something that's fairly popular, such as this issue here, and a lot of popular moves such as the CHIPS Act, for example, and the way abortion's actually been received in most states around the union, it's actually interesting that some of these close races that Democrats can find themselves in a position to flip. The candidates are not really looking at President Biden as their leader and hope to distance themselves a little bit in order to win votes from independents and on-the-fence Republicans who do not like President Biden. So it's a very interesting dynamic going on across the country. We'll see if the student loan cancellation actually improves anything, and let's see if it actually becomes something that will stay around for the future. I mean, I don't think it will. I think college will continue to increase in price, but this could be a step in the opposite direction. We'll see, and we'll be right back. So next up would be Blake Masters' campaign in Arizona. Blake Masters is the GOP Senate candidate in the state of Arizona. He ran his campaign pretty far from the center, leaned fairly right, had a lot of more extreme campaign stances. He's very pro, not even pro. I guess he does believe the election was stolen. He campaigned on it. President Trump gave him his endorsement, which really catapulted him over the edge. And he's now facing Senator Mark Kelly from Arizona. Senator Kelly had a special election last year, and now he's running for a full term. Of course, he was a former astronaut and husband of Gabby Giffords, who was shot while serving as a congresswoman from the state of Arizona. So, about Blake Masters, he was 100% pro-life up till recently. So, his campaign had the statement, "I am 100% pro-life," was on his old campaign website back literally a week ago. Now, however, it's been since last Thursday. Masters released an ad on Twitter that talks about abortion. In the video, his kids are in there, and he's playing with them, and he describes his new view on abortion as quote-unquote common sense, and says he supports limits on very late-term and partial birth abortion. So it's a very big change from what he said just a week ago, what he was been saying on the campaign trail. And it's interesting. So looking back, I've talked about the Kansas abortion vote a couple weeks ago, where Kansas, sorry about that, had the referendum on the topic, and the citizens of Kansas did not allow legislators to change the law described in the Supreme Court decision, the Kansas State Supreme Court decision, where abortion remains legal. So, and that was a 60-40 decision, so fairly overwhelming support for abortion in a red state like Kansas. Arizona, by contrast, is a swing state. It went to Biden in 2020 in a very contested election, very close election. However, it is way more closer on the national scale than Kansas has been and probably will ever be. And it's just interesting. So, seeing the Kansas issue, seeing a lot of the rhetoric around abortion and the popularity of abortion in the United States, Masters has switched his whole platform regarding abortion he's become way softer on it. He says that he wants to be in line with a lot of Western European nations, where some European nations have 15-week bans, some have 14. I believe one has 12. I don't want to name exact names because I don't remember the exact countries that have which numbers, but Masters has softened his stance so much. And it's interesting that, first thing, that he's actually went ahead and done this, because I personally believe that this shows that he has a very weak base in the state of Arizona, considering how much he campaigned on abortion and how extreme his view was in regard to the general population's view on the topic. So now, it just shows that a candidate like Masters, who is one of the more right-leaning candidates of the GOP's Senate hopefuls around the country, you can see how much he's even willing to shift his view to win the election here in November, especially after Dobbs v. Jackson. Something conservatives thought would be a very big point in history, and obviously it is. However, it's had a very adverse effect to what I'm assuming they intended. And a lot of movement has not been made on abortion. It has in the South. A lot of the southern states have banned it. If not completely, then to like 6 weeks. I believe Florida has 15 weeks. Texas has 6 weeks. I think Mississippi, I believe, has 15 weeks. So a lot of states have moved to banning it after a certain time period, but it just shows that the pressure brought to Republicans by this decision is really hurting even Blake Masters, one of the more conservative members of the crop of Senate hopefuls from the GOP. And again, Republicans look to be on track to dominate the midterms. Even in like April and May, President Biden was down. The economy was horrible. No talk about the abortion issue hadn't even came up at this point, but it looked like Republicans were going to run away with both houses of Congress. However, now the Senate looks like there's a very reasonable shot that the Democrats can keep the Senate. There's a very reasonable shot that Republicans will take the House, but it will be a very close election. It won't be the big 20, 30-point swing that a lot of people were predicting. And yeah, so Dobbs v. Jackson striking everywhere around the United States, including in Senate races in Arizona. Blake Masters, Mark Kelly. We'll see what happens there. We'll see what happens in other states, because it's a surefire issue in states like Georgia, New Hampshire, maybe even Ohio, like I said earlier. Pennsylvania, definitely Dr. Oz is down big in Pennsylvania and has not looked like really fighting back at all. So a lot of these swing states are going to have abortion as in the back of their minds when they vote. It'll be interesting to see what happens, but we'll definitely cover it again here on the podcast and also on the website. So thank you for listening, and we'll be right back. The last thing for today is a world issue. We wanted to touch a little bit on what Russia's doing in Eastern Europe, not in Ukraine, but actually in Hungary. So Russia and Hungary have had an agreement in 2014 to expand the Paks nuclear plant in Hungary. And recently they actually announced that Rosatom, the Russian nuclear power company, will begin construction on 2 new nuclear reactors in Hungary, per Hungarian Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó last week. So the Russian nuclear power, most of Russia has been hit by sanctions throughout Europe and the world, but the nuclear power industry is one that actually has not been hit by anything. And of course, Hungary is in the EU, and the EU has not sanctioned nuclear power, so this is actually something that they've been looking forward to doing for a while. And yeah, so the Paks nuclear plant supplies over 40% of Hungarian electricity, and Szijjártó, the foreign minister, called the decision to go ahead and start building the new reactors an important milestone. He says that he hopes that the reactors will be ready for use and service by 2030, so 8 years from now, maybe 7, depending on when they actually open. The cost will be $12.4 billion United States dollars, and Russia will be the one primarily financing it, which again shows that they have been able to make despite the war in Ukraine, they've still been making money. The sanctions everybody put on them have not affected them to the degree that everyone had hoped that they would, as they've been very keen on exporting oil. India is a big buyer of Russian oil currently, as is China, and they have not felt a massive economic collapse that we had hoped they would due to our sanctioning. So European nations, obviously, with Ukraine, have been looking for the ways to decrease dependence on Russian energy. Of course, Germany is a big user of Russian oil. They've been trying to find ways to wean off of that, as is a lot of Europe, especially Eastern Europe, where the Soviet influence the Soviet Union existed formerly. Of course, it's been very tough for them to actually find ways to get new energy sources in time to satisfy demand. But Hungary has Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, is a very close ally of Putin. I don't think we can call them allies exactly, but Orban is a somewhat authoritarian in his rule, and him and Putin are not, I wouldn't say friends, but they are definitely friendly, and they definitely do have similar interests in their countries. It's not exactly a decree of alliance or anything making these nuclear powers, but it is very interesting that Hungary is going ahead and doing this at this time. It's a very inflammatory time around Eastern Europe and Europe in general, and the world in general. And Hungary moving forward with this, which was, again, this agreement was struck in 2014, and they're now actually going through with it. So it's a very interesting timetable for them to go ahead and actually begin doing construction on these power plants. Nuclear power is not really embraced. It is embraced more in Europe than it is in the United States. Unfortunately for us, I think nuclear power has a lot of benefits, but they've been a lot of green activists in Europe have actually, especially in Germany, have actually been against nuclear power, which is very odd considering nuclear power is a very efficient and very green way to do energy production. And this is what caused a lot of issues with the German electricity, actually. Them shutting down their nuclear reactors, their nuclear plants, or planning to shut them down in the next few months and years here, actually contributed to them having very limited reserves of fuel, electricity, and this is what's caused them to buy from Russia so heavily, and it's just all a mess there. So Hungary going through the nuclear power plants here from Russia. Russia's financing most of it. It's not unreasonable to suggest that Hungary will owe Russia a debt in the near future, and what that will be, I don't know, but it is an interesting development to look at and something to keep an eye out on in the next few years. So thank you, and goodbye. So thank you for listening. We just wanted to go through a couple stories, domestic and abroad. I think there was some stuff that was not being touched on too much, such as especially the nuclear power plant deal. Student loans obviously have been everywhere, but the power plant deal is something that's just interesting to look at, and the effects of that will definitely be felt in the future rather than in the present. So it's just something to have in the back of your mind for the future. So thank you for listening. You can find us on Instagram, pbpolitical.al. Same with Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, pbpolitical, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of that for our podcast website, obviously. Thank you for listening. We'll be back no episode next week, but we will be back September the 9th, I believe is the next day. No, not the 9th. September the 12th. We'll be back September the 12th. And we'll see you then. I'm Eshan Pokhrel. Thank you, and goodbye.